346 people died in two terrible Boeing 737 MAX crashes: Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. The first crash happened on October 29, 2018, when Lion Air Flight 610 went down in the Java Sea not long after taking off from Jakarta, Indonesia. All 189 people on board died. The second crash happened on March 10, 2019, just minutes after taking off from Addis Ababa. All 157 people on board Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 died in the crash near Bishoftu, Ethiopia. The Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCAS, a flight control system meant to keep the plane from stopping, was found to be broken in both crashes. The MCAS was set off by wrong information from a single angle of attack sensor, which made the planes frequently nosedive even though the pilots tried to regain control. Investigations showed that Boeing had not told airlines and pilots enough about the MCAS and how it worked, and they had not given enough training on how to handle a failure. When the certification process was looked into more, it was found that Boeing had lied to authorities and played down the risks of the MCAS. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, was also blamed for not keeping an eye on things and giving Boeing too much power during the certification process. Because of the crashes, the 737 MAX was grounded all over the world in March 2019, and regulators, politicians, and the public looked closely at Boeing. When Boeing admitted to fraud and decided to pay over $2.5 billion in fines and compensation, the U.S. Department of Justice put off prosecuting the company until January 2021. Since then, the company has made big changes to its safety procedures and work culture, but the crashes are still a stark reminder of what terrible things can happen when you put business ahead of safety. After the terrible crashes of 3 Boeing 737 MAX planes in 2018 and 2019, which killed 346 people, the planes were grounded around the world. This led to long investigations that found problems with the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCAS, and showed that Boeing didn't tell pilots and regulators enough about the system. To stop this from happening again, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and other regulatory bodies tightened up the oversight and licensing processes. The 737 MAX was cleared to go back into service in late 2020, after a lot of tests and modifications. However, Boeing continued to have problems, such as production delays and problems with the supply chain. Because of these events, safety and openness have become even more important in the aviation business. As a result, Boeing has made big changes to its safety practices and corporate culture. The U.S. Department of Justice and Boeing came to a deal in January 2021 that put off prosecution. Boeing admitted to fraud and agreed to pay over $2.5 billion in fines and compensation. There was a $243.6 million fine, $500 million for the families of the victims, and $1.77 billion for airline customers as part of this deal. Boeing didn't have to go to court for a crime because of the agreement, but the company had to make big changes to its safety standards and work culture. Even with these steps, Boeing was still under a lot of criticism and legal problems. In July 2024, Boeing decided to plead guilty to a fraud charge, which meant that it admitted it had lied to regulators about how safe the 737 MAX was. This guilty plea shows how bad it is to put money ahead of safety, and it shows how important it is for the aviation business to be open and responsive. It's important to know the following about Boeing's guilty plea. If Boeing keeps its promise to plead guilty to fraud in connection with getting approval for its 737 MAX before 2 of them crashed, killing 346 people off the coast of Indonesia and in Ethiopia, the company will be given a felony sentence. It looks like the American aerospace giant has decided that pleading guilty is better than fighting the charges and going through a long public hearing. The plea deal isn't set in stone yet, though. Some of the passengers who died's families have said they will ask a federal judge in Texas to throw out the deal because they think it is too easy on the people who died. It's important to them that Boeing bosses go to court and pay a big fine. The Justice Department released the agreement in a legal document late Sunday, just minutes before the deadline of midnight. It said the fraud charge against Boeing was the most serious, readily provable offense it could bring. Boeing will have to pay a fine of $243.6 million, the same amount it paid for the same crime in 2021. The Justice Department says that if Boeing is found guilty of theft, it will have to pay for the misstatements it made to the government officials who approved the 737 MAX in 2017. In 2018 and 2019, the crashes happened less than 5 months apart. There are still investigations going on into the blowout of a panel from an Alaska Airlines MAX in January, more oversight from the Federal Aviation Administration, and claims from current and former workers that the company does bad work and punishes people who blow the whistle. What did Boeing say? Boeing agreed to plead guilty to conspiring to steal from the US government, which in this case meant lying to the FAA. The Justice Department first brought that charge in 2021, but as part of a deferred prosecution deal, it agreed not to go after Boeing if it paid a fine and did well on a form of corporate probation for 3 years. But in May, the department found that Boeing had not kept their end of the deal. This started the chain of events that led to Sunday's plea deal. The plea deal could help Boeing get rid of a bad reputation issue. The felony charge that the American aerospace giant lied to the people who approved the plane and the training standards for pilots to safely fly it. What did Boeing say they would do? The total amount of money that Boeing will have to pay in fines will now reach $487.2 million. This is the most that the Justice Department says is legally possible for the fraud charge. The company has to spend at least $455 million to make things safer as part of the deal. It will be on 3 years of court-supervised probation, and the Justice Department will appoint an outside monitor to make sure Boeing follows the rules of the plea deal. The families of the people who died will have to meet with Boeing's board of directors. Can the judge stop the deal? Yes. In Fort Worth, Texas, there will be a hearing in front of U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor. His sentence for Boeing can't be changed if he agrees to the terms of the deal. That is, he can turn it down, which would probably mean that Boeing and investigators have to start talking again. The meeting has not been given a date. Lawyers don't always agree with deals where the defendant and the federal government agree on a term. The judges don't like them. Deborah Curtis, a former lawyer at the Justice Department, said, "They feel that it takes away their power." On the other hand, O'Connor has shown respect for the Justice Department's power in the past. When the crash victims' families tried to get out of the 2021 deferred prosecution deal, the judge said that he could not overturn the settlement because of what he called Boeing's egregious criminal conduct. What would happen to Boeing if they were found guilty? Boeing's business has never been the same since the crashes. Because of the extra attention the company got after what happened with Alaska Airlines, they didn't get any new orders for the MAX in April or May. It is even further behind its European peer Airbus in terms of making and delivering new planes, which means it is making less money. It's all going on while Boeing looks for a new CEO to take over for David Calhoun, who says he'll leave at the end of the year. Does the plea change how other investigations into Boeing are done? It would only clear up the theft charge that was brought after the 2 fatal crashes. People on the Alaska Airline MAX that had a panel blowout over Oregon were told by the FBI that they could be victims of a crime. The Federal Aviation Administration is looking into how well Boeing makes planes, and the National Transportation Safety Board is also looking into what happened. Thanks for watching this video.